Hello and welcome to Simply inTAXicating. The GST is a reality in India today. 1 week, or roughly little more than 1 week, since the GST was officially launched from the Central Hall of the Parliament by the Honorable Prime Minister and the President of India, lots of feedbacks reaching North Block, the GST Council and the CBEC War Room, and also the field formation from the trade industry. What are the ground realities? It was supposed to promote ease of doing business. It was supposed to be initially going with the plan that it is going to be a painless implementation. Of course, the government pushed it a little hard and made it 1st July. So let's find out from 4 domain experts that how painful or the painless the GST implementation is going to be now after 1 week. So we have Mr. Pratik Jain, the national leader, PwC, and our knowledge partner also. We have Mr. Anil Bahl, Taxation Head, Airtel, the leading telecom company, and we have Mr. Sashank Priya, Joint Secretary, GST Council. We have Mr. Singh from GST Network, the man who is going to bear the brunt. So let me start with Pratik. What has been the feedback after 7-8 days from the industry trade? Naturally, lots of inputs reaching you from your own client and across the country, of course.
I think there was a lot of fear to start with, but I would say that it has been much smoother than we all thought it would be. There was a fear like Y2K at some point in time that what will happen, whether I'll be able to raise my first invoice, whether the business will come to a standstill, etc. I think it's not happened. In fact, on that 30th June, there were retailers who actually opened the shop till 2 o'clock in the morning to say that, we are GST compliant and we are able to raise the invoice. So I think from that yardstick, I think it has been successful. Much of the credit goes to the government. To my mind, I have never seen government officers working like this. 18 hours a day or maybe even more. The public outreach program, every day when you switch on the TV, there is somebody from the government answering that. Master classes are going on. So I think this is a massive outreach. Having said that, I think there are few issues which still need to be dealt with. I'm not sure whether the entire SME segment is still prepared. Still, if you go to small restaurants, people are charging wrong taxes. Somebody is charging VAT, somebody is charging, some other tax. So there is a lot of this effort needs to continue. Now, there are some specific issues which are big industry issues, which are almost every company gets impacted with that needs to be sorted out. One is, things like high seas sale. Okay. Other is, what happened to the excise free zone, Uttaranchal, Himachal Pradesh, of course, notification has to come. J&K, it seems to be sorted out now because from today, SGST Act is applicable. As we speak today, we haven't seen the ordinance about CGST and IGST. So that was one of the big concerns that industry had. And then there are sector-specific issues which are coming up. Telecom, there are different issues. For FMCG, different issues. I think the sectoral committee which was set up, they need to really now act fast and come to the industry. One last point I will make is, and that's something which I urge, sir, you to kind of also look at and take that feedback, that when we say ease of doing business, I think there are lots and lots of things where the industry feels today that it has not resulted in the desired intent getting translated into the thing. Things like for export of services also, you have to now do a LUT or bond, which was not there earlier. Now, you have to put a HSN code on the invoice, which you understand. But if I am a retailer and I have 30,000 SKUs which I am selling every day, for every invoice that I cut, even to consumer, I have to put a HSN code. I think some of those things now need to be looked at and say, what is the intent of the government? And does it match the intent on that? I think ease of doing business is one focus area where I guess in the next 2-3 months, we need to work together as industry and as the government to take the real benefit on the ground.
Right, sir. So before, sir, I go to Mr. Bahl, of course, the point with Pratik raised, sir, is that the ease of doing business, which was one of the focus areas, the objectives of GST, perhaps that is falling victim, sir. And HSN, for instance, is one such example. How do you look at it, sir? Lots of feedback must have reached you. The council is receiving a lot of inputs. Naturally, council is very proactive. Rather, the entire official front is being led by Revenue Secretary himself, who has been explaining technical issues. CBEC officers, technical people taking, the second row. That itself is a very interesting change on the government front. So that's very good. The captain is taking the lead. So, sir, what has been your input, sir, on this?
First, let me echo what Pratik said, that from the government side also, the feedback has been that the kind of fears of, a lot of difficulties arising on implementation of GST, they were unfounded. By and large, the rollout has been smooth. We have not heard anything very drastically wrong. There are unease in certain sectors,
Right.
like textiles, where for the first time tax has been imposed. There are certain difficulties with regard to specific issues of clarifications that is required, sectoral issues there are. But on the whole, the rollout has been quite smooth. And the government is very proactive in ensuring two things. One, to the extent possible, the traders are not put into any kind of a trouble. So he mentioned about master classes being done,
Right.
a lot of outreach activity being done, a lot of training
Yes,
programs
absolutely.
being done. So that is one aspect of it. Second aspect is that now there is a more structured way of addressing the issues of taxpayers through sectoral groups who are now working on certain the issues that have been raised before them by the stakeholders. On the basis of that, some compilation of guidance notes is in the
Right.
offing. So
Correct.
that is the second thing. And the other issue is with regard to the consumers, because they are also equal stakeholders
Absolutely, sir. Yes.
on this new tax system. So one is consumer awareness, how the tax rates have been worked out, where the tax rates have gone down, and what do they expect that where the rates should be down. That is number one. And number two, we are also trying to empower everybody through IT to understand what the implications are. So yesterday you would have seen that there was a app has been released by the Honorable Finance Minister to see what is the rates of duty, so that everybody who does have to navigate.
Right.
He's mentioning about HS code, so you can feed an HS code, you will get a description. So effort is to empower people, both taxpayers as well as public at large, to navigate through this tax which is being looked upon as new and not so easy to navigate. So government is trying its best to navigate it. As far as specific issues regarding ease of doing business, well, some of the issues that he talked about, HS code, in order to ensure that burden is not cast, it is already there that for small taxpayers with turnover of less than 1.5 crore, there will be no HS code would be there. That was the whole idea.
Sir.
But at the same time, we cannot just jettison something which is good and which is important in respect of your tax planning, in respect of your statistical purposes, and also it is an international system, so we cannot just let it go. So we have to strike a balance between a good tax system and a complete ease of doing business. And in order to ensure that ease of doing business is not completely affected, wherever it was recognized that there are difficulties like return filing, GSTR1, GSTR2, GSTR3 has been given a 2 months extension. Your TCS provisions have been given extension.
Yeah, right.
So efforts are there that wherever there is an immediate concern about burdensomeness being too much or lack of readiness, so there we have government has tried to proactively address that.
The service codes, I remember, the CBEC website, of course, it provides an Excel file, but it is not going to be notified, the group head, the chapter heading, for the services particularly.
Services also, already the council has given a decision, so it is in the process of getting notified.
Notified, sir. Okay. So let me go to, sir, Mr. Singh. Of course, you are under tremendous pressure, of course. You are the loved one for most of the taxpayers now, So what has been the preparation now? In between, the GST network came under fire also from good number of, some of my media friends also did the pretty good job. They attacked GSTN. But GSTN has been coming out regularly with their preparation. They have been quite realistic. They have been quite forthright in sharing their mind. So what is the stage of preparation now?
See, as representatives from the industry have told, Mr. Pratik Jain said, by and large, this rollout has been a fairly smooth one.
Right.
And to ensure this, because this rollout is critically based on the IT platform, to ensure this rollout, GSTN and its service provider, Infosys, has been working for the last 1.5 years. We started enrollment of the existing taxpayers to the GST regime in October. And by the time this rollout happened, most of the taxpayers, around 67 to 68 lakhs, had migrated, had activated their account. In January, we started training of the tax officers and a very robust platform in which the tax officers were required to take a pre-test, and there was a post-test also after the training.
Right.
And very rigorous training has been going on for all the tax officers of the India, all states and center, and with all the one round of training got completed before this rollout.
Okay.
As you know, the migration has been successful. New registration was started, and by now around more than 3.5 lakhs taxpayers have filed their registration application, of which around more than 1 lakh have been granted registration.
Okay.
In such a large system, there is bound to be some teething problems, because there are scenarios where the application is not able to handle and some validation errors come up. But people are working both in Infosys and GST and day and night to handle these exceptional scenarios which are coming up, and we are, I think, successfully meeting the expectation, because you should realize that it is a very, very massive system, and there are integration issues, because for validation we have to integrate, we are integrated with CBDT website. For send-in validation, we are integrated with the company's database, and then there is integration between the Model 1 state, say the 8-9 states who are doing, who have developed their own application, and CBC.
Okay.
And then data is also going to other states where the officers have to approve the registration, all the 27 states. So it is a massive effort, but things are moving in positive direction, and we look forward to more successful rollout of the other features in the coming month, in this month, and then.
So would you like to share some tips for people who are seeking registration with the GST network? As you said that 3.5 lakh registration application received, but just 1 lakh granted. So you must be facing the kind of problem.
They are in the process. You have 3 days. There is a 3-day for the scrutiny. That is, the officers are have 3 days time to scrutinize the application.
Okay.
And raise a query if any.
So, I mean, any word of caution for the taxpayer?
Caution is that,
the kind of mistake they are making, or the kind of document they should submit which they are not doing, or something like that, or maybe the PAN itself.
One thing which I think I would like to say to all the taxpayers, that they should be very cautious in filling the names of the company and the promoter, and it should match with what is there in the CBDT database, because there is online validation. If there is even a single error, then the validation is failing, and then they have
spelling difference also makes a difference.
Brackets, spelling, all types of things, whether capital, the name is surname, what is there. Everything should be similar as is there in the CBDT database, and in case of Companies Act, in the send-in database. So and they should have all the documents ready with them when they file. Then they will be able to file it quickly. We have a mobile app also for this, for the migration, for filling up other data in the migration application, which they can download and then fill and upload.
So we will talk about the other applications. I mean, these are the basics of any new tax system, the registration. Of course, we will talk about the payment, the refund, the audit, so many things, the input, output, invoice matching, so many other aspects are there. Let me go to Mr. Bahl. So what has been the feedback? I mean, apart from your own sector, of course, the telecom will have lots of inputs. General, overall, from the industry side, the kind of issues which in last 7 days, 8 days you have come across.
I think first of all, I must compliment GST as well as the government, state governments and the central government, who have taken a big leap for our country to be in the next league, where we are at par on the global standards. That GST is a reality.
Right.
And we have been dreaming about this for last almost 1 year. If I start with Airtel particularly, our preparation in-house has started around 1.5 years back, when we started imagining something that this could be done like this. Perhaps this kind of events will be handled like this, and slowly and gradually the draft law start creeping in. Then we made the representation with the government, and the response is very overwhelming. They heard us very patiently, they understood our pains and pleasures. I think they have done their bit in the given time, and the kind of framework which was envisaged by the constitution, that now this is going to be a federal unity in terms of GST Council, and with their blessing things are going to move. I am sure, I think a lot of things have already been taken care of, and the teething problems will remain, and we appreciate that. And we also expect that the government will also look forward to the industry, that industry will also have the same kind of teething problems. and that elbow room will be allowed to them in terms
Exactly.
of compliances, no penalties, no interest, in terms of reaching
Right.
that kind of understanding. So far as if I have to talk about the pain and pleasures of GST, typically for the industry per se, I think so far as implementation has been smooth, because we envisaged something, we planned well,
Right.
and we were able to implement it.
Right.
Since telecom per se is a mass industry, we deal with masses. When we talk in terms of almost 90 crore people on the mobile penetration, and the distribution of the recharge coupons or the postpaid services or the enterprise services, typically the backbone of this country is telecom. If we talk of IT, ITES, if we talk of any other BPO, KPOs, which is the sunrise industry, the billion-dollar earning industry for this country, the entire backbone is telecom for that. So given that kind of immense importance of a particular sector, the distribution of the same also has to be looked into from that perspective. I think we need to be kind enough to the entire backbone, how it actually practically works. Now, if we talk in terms of the distribution of recharge coupons, so the volumes are huge. There will be thousands of distributors involved into there are millions of retailers involved into that, so that the ease of this telecom service is there for the customer. You walk out of your home, go to the next, maybe a panwala vendor, you can get the recharge done. So the ease of doing business starts from home, say from a telecom company. It reaches to the last leg when the customer also has the ease and convenience of getting that kind of service. And I believe now GST is going to touch each and everybody from that perspective.
Correct.
So it in fact is a huge task, not only for telecom, but for I think by and large all type of industries. Everybody is going to be touched with GST. I think it might become quite an emotional aspect also for the people who are going to taste this pill of GST. Now only time will tell whether this pill turns out to be a sweet one or a bitter one.
Right. Okay. Okay. One issue to take, which I have also received quite a few inputs from large industries, with respect to stocks. You have come across the inputs again, on June 30th. So lots of people are still having issues with respect to stocks.
No, I think yes. So I think transition stock has become a big issue. I mean, I think government has done what they could, but one I think conceptual point was that anybody who has excise duty paying document can claim credit on the basis of actual. What this led, and that shouldn't have happened actually, is that every large company started taking excise registration for all their warehouses. And that led to a lot of logistical issues. I mean, you had to take excise registration because you wanted to pass on. From the factory, when the goods moved to the warehouse, of course, it has an excise duty document. But beyond that, nobody was registered.
True.
So it then led to a lot of excise duty registration, a lot of maintenance of record, then people pass it on, etc. Now, then there was a concept of deemed credit, which was there, that if you don't have a duty-paying document, you can claim deemed credit of 40%, 60%. If the rate is more than 18 or more than 60%, otherwise 40. Particularly for products which attract 28% rate, this deemed credit was not sufficient. Okay, because you get 60% or 14% back, which is around 8%. But your tax rate was moving from 13-14% of VAT to 28%. So still you had a loss of 6-7%. That led to a situation where people started destocking. And therefore you see the last quarter, April to June, the growth, the manufacturing growth has come down because people did not buy stock.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Now that was unfortunately, I mean, this is how it ultimately came to. But now things are now settling in. The other problem was then they also introduced a concept of credit transfer document. That if you have more than 25,000 rupees value, you can transfer. But again, that was restricted to manufacturers, not for importers. So we made representation that it should be extended to importers also, but it was only done to. So I would say from a policy standpoint, things moved very fast on this. There was a lot of issues which are unclear. Perhaps this rush for excise duty registration, the government should have tried to stop. But those are things of past. Now we have to ensure that whatever documentation has to be done in Tran 1, Tran 2, etc., which they have to file, there is adequate clarification issued to the trade and to the industry. That problem is to the extent minimized, because whatever has happened has happened. Now we need to move forward.
Okay, Mr. Bahl, you had some specific issue on this 30th June.
Yes. Now, typically when talking in terms of the recharge coupon and SIM cards, in the Finance Act, in the mega exemption, the resellers and distributor and retailers of SIM card and prepaid voucher were exempt. And the telecom companies were supposed to pay tax on the MRP because of valuation rules. Unfortunately, in the mega exemption list under the GST, that exemption has been withdrawn. So in a way now the distributors and retailers become liable to pay tax. And at the same time, unfortunately, in the transition provisions, to our mind, it appears to be a miss, or it could be a matter of interpretation. Now, if we look at specifically 142(11)(b) under the CGST Act, which says to the extent the tax was leviable under the Finance Act, no tax is payable under GST. Question arises, if somebody was exempt in the earlier regime, does that section apply to him also? Because if the taxability was on the MRP, there is no extent that is left over to be taxed. So these kind of teething issues are there where the industry also has a fear. And what I understand today is there's a lot of scale down in terms of uplift and sale of these recharge vouchers because of lack of clarity.
Okay.
We have been representing to the government and we have made the representation, we have given our understanding to them that in our mind, because of this exemption to the fullest extent tax has been paid, anybody in the chain if dealing with those kind of goods or services is not liable to pay any kind of tax. Perhaps if this aspect would have been in the law, this would have been much clearer for everybody. So those kind of instances are there.
Okay.
So one more issue which I want to highlight on the transition, but perhaps needs to be also looked at. What happens to the advance which I have on June 30th?
Okay.
Because advances were not taxable earlier in context of goods. So if I have a 100 crore advance with me which I have collected, do I need to pay tax upfront?
Okay.
Or do I pay tax when I raise an invoice? That's one. Second is, in certain cases, I have received advances where the services were not taxed earlier. For example, print media. That has become taxable for the first time.
Right.
But I have advance on 30th of June, which I have collected from the customer. Okay, which is huge advance some cases, but the ad will be published later. So in that case, will that be liable, as Anil is saying, that if it was leviable earlier, but it was not leviable earlier in this case. So do I need to pay tax now? I need to collect that 5% from each customer that had given me advance, and several of those customers could be consumers as well. So I do go back to those consumers and collect that 5%. If the interpretation is yes, you have to, then I think there should be some exemption. Which should be given for those sectors where the services become taxable for the first time, but advances were received earlier.
But I mean, these are little practical issues, sir, in fact.
The basic understanding regarding transition is that whatever activities took place before the appointed date, that is the 1st of July, in those cases, the earlier provisions of law would apply. So if advances were taken earlier, then you don't have to then pay tax on that so far as goods are concerned. Similarly, for services, if there was a sector which was not liable to tax earlier and if advance was received, you will not now say that advance was received earlier, so you pay tax.
So the issue, sir, is that section says that to the extent tax was leviable under the earlier law. Now, in this case, if it's a specific example which I gave you, the tax was not leviable under the earlier law because it was falling in the negative list. So in that case, there's a problem which has come in that, strictly speaking, perhaps somebody can take a view that that section is not applicable. So that is one area which perhaps needs to be looked into. But yes, on advances which we have received earlier for goods, if it is in the interpretation is that you don't need to pay tax on that immediately, you need to pay tax when the invoice is issued, then that provides some clarification on this point.
It's a very typical issue, so probably we'll have to take a look at it. Of course, transitional provision is very comprehensive, exhaustive. It has taken into account various kind of situation. In fact, I have an interesting query from one very large corporate. We say that the goods that we build during the last week of June were not accepted by the distributors due to their internal system issue, and the goods have come back during the week on our own documents. Under which provisions you would be allowed to take credit? Can we take credit under 1405? If yes, the language used in the said section says tax has been paid by the suppliers, do not seem to be conducive to claim under 1405. So, sir, what could be the situation? Maybe even Pratik could attempt this. He's saying that
I think so. That's an issue because wherever there is a sales return which is happening, there is a specific provision for that to say that it will be treated as a supply back from the buyer to you. So he will charge tax and I will claim the credit of that. So that's not a problem.
Okay.
The problem here is that it's not a sales return because my buyer never recorded that as a purchase. So it can't be a sales return.
Absolutely, yes.
So in this case, I think the only option would be to claim a in my VAT return. So for June end, which I'm filing, you treat that as a sales cancellation, etc. under that return, and don't take it into GST because he would have applied VAT
Right,
If
correct.
we have sold before.
Correct.
So the GST provision to my mind does not even apply on this because there was supply made prior, which was never or sales invoice issued
The
earlier.
returns are post July 1st then.
That is not considered as supply for this purpose. I think supply is only considered where I have supplied the goods, sold the goods before GST come in,
Okay.
and then there is a sales return happening. In this case, it was never a sale to start with.
Okay.
It should not be a supply to my mind. I mean, I don't think it should qualify.
That there was an issue, of course. Yes, sir. You wanted to add something, sir?
I would tend to agree with Pratik that wherever transaction has not been completed,
Right.
so there it should not be really regarded as a sales return.
Right.
It would only be where transaction was completed, and the
Completed
transaction value provisions will apply.
Right, sir. So another interesting question which I find here, sir, maybe both of you or all of us could apply our mind, the valuation section 15. There they are talking about the value of supply include all kinds of taxes. But as per this query, a tax paid under IGST is missed out, for exclusion in arriving at the value of supply. Is it okay? Is it deliberate?
All taxes paid.
All taxes excluded
under GST.
Naturally for valuation purpose, section 15, but IGST is not there. So then
CG is okay.
IGST is missing here.
Then
you have to see that section.
It excludes all kinds of taxes.
but you are, I think, reading from the CGST
CGST Act. You should
If
look
you
at
read the IGST Act, it will be there.
I will have to see that. This query I have received, so I will have to check that.
Maybe IGST Act has just borrowed the section.
Borrowing,
So then
They will substitute the word.
So
say,
I'm sure that will be corrected. I'm sure the intention is.
Probably, but there's a little confusion in the industry and trade. So that is
one interesting aspect is there on this also. Now, typically for the entertainment tax, since it has been allowed for the Gram Panchayats or municipalities to levy it, perhaps if the intent is very clear that they have been given the powers, again there is going to be an overlap. Because if the pricing is fixed and tomorrow somebody introduces it, typically I am talking of DTH or telecom, if the municipality goes ahead and says 5% entertainment tax is payable on DTH also. Now question comes up, for the purpose of valuation, is there going to be any reduction in that? Because MRP is fixed, tariffs are fixed, they are again governed by TRAI. So I think that kind of exclusion has to be there. That to the extent entertainment tax is there,
this is the live example.
No IGST should apply.
Tamil Nadu apparently has imposed some 30% entertainment
all
tax.
cinema halls are closed and it's
but that would be governed by the provisions of that particular law that has been implemented by the local bodies.
Absolutely, sir. But I am saying in the GST Act, that exclusion should be there. That in case something of that sort comes up in the nature of that is not part of the value.
From this.
That should be excluded, sir. Exactly. Then with respect to exports, sir, in fact, even I have received a lot of input from some of the states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, particularly on exports front.
I think exports needs to be, sir, completely relooked at, to my mind, because for service exporter to have a condition of a bond or a LUT, it was not there earlier. And it was only there in context of excise. So now, since the Act itself says that you have to satisfy certain conditions, you are protected by the Act. So then if I go and sign a bond saying yes, if I don't collect foreign exchange, I'll pay tax. I mean, anyway, that the Act itself says. So why do I need to have that bond? And even if it is a bond or LUT is one time, etc., and the condition of LUT is that I should have collected 1 crore of foreign exchange in last 1 year, etc. That means the smaller ones, smaller service exporters will not qualify to get a LUT. They'll have to do a bond along with BG, etc. So lakhs of service exporters will get impacted by this. So why would we want to do this? The second fundamental question which comes up is that now the law has changed to say if the services do not qualify as export, then it is liable to tax. Earlier, even if the recipient is abroad, earlier the law was that if it does not qualify as export, then you don't need to pay tax on that. It will be treated as exempt supply, so you need to reverse the credit. But now because of this, things like, when I don't, suppose there is a bad debt or I don't collect foreign exchange within time, or I have a branch office providing services to head office abroad, which does not qualify as export, there is a risk of 18% getting levied on that. That will be a huge hit for software companies, banking institutions, infrastructure companies who have this office here and head office abroad. Maybe that is unintended, but needs to be clarified. But the larger point is that the entire export sector and the documentation requirement I think needs a serious reconsideration and immediate reconsideration.
I hope these points you have raised before the sectoral committee on exports, because they are all in the process of preparing all these kind of issues that have come from the trade, and then issue some kind of a guidance note, or where there is requirement, then issue some suitable guidelines. Or
most of these have been taken up, sir, except maybe the LUT point, because the notification has just come in. But most of the other points have been
taken. But the GSTN was not ready, for exporters, for instance. You have the bond and undertaking to be given, and then you have a particular form, RBF 11 or something. There is one form for the exporters, RFD 11. Yes, RFD 11, form RFD 11 for the exporters. And that should have been logically uploaded in the GST network. Why they have to go to the jurisdictional deputy commissioner's office and range offices, because now it is being done manually. It is being done manually. The
right
CBEC has given instructions.
And it will be done, I think, for a few months.
Yeah, it would have taken some time for them to
this
prepare the software.
Came very late.
Okay.
And the law is that it is saying that he has to furnish it to the jurisdictional commissioner. And they have, I think, delegated it to
some of these things, like even I think appeals in regard to cancellation of registration.
Right.
Now it is not online; it will be done physically.
So, but export side, so there is a break here. Probably we
were
required to gear up a little more on this.
That SRS is now final, because the forms got finalized very late.
It's all time,
and that has been, now all the features have been incorporated in the SRS, and work is going to start very soon, and you will have all the back-end modules. There is a priority now for the back-end modules. First refund, then this appeal is there, then you have advance ruling. All these have been prioritized and will be released.
The advance ruling, Sir Pratik had a very interesting point.
No, I think the industry is really looking forward to the advance ruling, because advance ruling provision are much more liberal, right? Because you can cover the existing issues also. Under the erstwhile advance ruling, you only could cover the proposed transaction. Correct. So it's broader, and because of the issues that industry would face on GST, there will be lots and lots of interpretation issues which will come. The issue that we see on advance ruling is that it seems that I'll have to go for an independent advance ruling in all the states where I'm doing business. So on the same issue, the law is same, CGST law is same, SGST law is same, but I'll have to go to 30 different states to get a ruling. And if there are conflicting rulings, then I'm stuck. So I think on advance ruling, sir, again, maybe some bit of thinking has to happen, because if we, as a assessee, if I have to go to 30 states and I want a common law, then it defeats the purpose. So
it's a realistic problem, sir, actually.
The design was discussed at the time of formulation of the advance ruling, and this was debated. And one thinking was that you should have an all India jurisdiction kind of an advance ruling, which the central government has. But the state's concern was that you will have to have, individual jurisdictions. Otherwise, this individual jurisdictions of states will get curtailed. So, because of the concerns that the states had, it was finally agreed that each state will have its own advance ruling authority. So, it has been a conscious decision. And I know that a lot of people from trade had, even at the design stage, had expressed concern on this issue.
So, just one suggestion, sir, maybe then the second via media, if that is a policy decision, is that there can be, the states can debate amongst ourselves. Maybe GST Council can create a committee to say all the advance ruling which are being there, let that committee which comprises of all the states take a decision on that. Because you don't want a situation where one advance ruling takes a different view, other advance ruling takes a different, because industry then purpose is defeated.
Right.
Or else if that advance ruling is already there by one state, then the other state which is going against that advance ruling for some reason has to give some guidance as to the reasoned order as to why that advance ruling is not being followed. Because if I take it to appeal stage, then at least I know at what points I'm appealing.
In fact, one of the thinking that is why is that before we get full force into the advance ruling, the more generic problems that is being faced across various taxpayers, we try and address them through guidance note.
Yes.
And then we see how, if there are still issues, then individually it can go through advance ruling. That is the kind of thinking.
So on this promising note, let me thank all my 4 panelists for the wonderful suggestions. Of course, the industry and trade, the problem they were visualizing earlier, it did not turn out to be. So it's not nightmarish, certainly not. Of course, some individual sectoral issues are there which needs to be addressed. For the government also, it deserves credit for being very proactive and aggressive in the outreach program. They're reaching out in terms of master classes. CBC officers are coming out and trying to answer the queries of the small traders through mail, through tweet, through a television, all sorts of media being utilized here. But the backbone of all this outreach program and communication, the telecom looks little sad, which needs to be addressed. And hopefully the GST Council, our policymakers, the lawmakers, once they get a sense of comfort in a few weeks or maybe in a few months, perhaps they would be a little more kind and considerate towards the intraday industry. Thanking you all for watching TIOL.